tassa bhagavato Samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Very good. So, we are now on to the happy times, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. Now, where did we get to last time? Did we get there? Or the wanting, never letting, settling, grow. Okay. So wherever in the world there is anything agreeable and pleasurable, there the cessation of wanting comes about. And what is there in the world that is agreeable and pleasurable? Sight in the world is agreeable and pleasurable. Hearing, smell, taste, touch, and knowing is agreeable. That's the six senses. And there this wanting comes to be abandoned. There its cessation comes about. So what it's talking about there is you cannot expect to become fully enlightened just by closing your eyes and just by putting cotton wool in your ears and not feeling anything in this world. I remember one of Ajahn Chah's stories. He told me when he was a novice, maybe about 18 or 19 years of age, that he was a young man. He had lots of sexual lust. And so he decided for one rains retreat for 3 months, he would never look at any lay person, girl or boy. He just put his head down on arms round. He would always look at the floor. He would never look at anywhere. And he was such strong-willed, he kept that for 3 months. He never saw a woman, a Thai girl, for over 3 months. And then once his vow was over, the first girl he looked, he was away in lust. He just really lost it. Just trying to avoid the causes of wanting was not good enough. Not just don't see, don't hear, because you can only do that for so long. And then you do see, you do hear. And that's where you've got to stop, understand just the processes of the mind, and that's where the wanting stops. Even here in Bodhinyana monastery, that you cannot, this is teaching monks, you cannot just keep the monastery or the monk's life so they never see anybody who's attractive or anything which is nice food or good taste or anything which is appealing. So you can't do that. So as a monastery, we try and have limited exposure, but not no exposure. If you had no exposure at all, again, young monks, the first beautiful girl they see, and then they get lost. We always used to say, as young monks in Thailand, that you go into the jungles, and there'll be very dangerous animals there like tigers. But not many monks got killed by tigers. Many monks got killed by Thai girl. They were the dangerous. And you can't just avoid. You just have to make sure, see, understand, and then transcend. So that's in the world. Where there's anything agreeable and pleasurable. That's the place where the understanding and the ceasing of wanting comes about. Whatever spiritual seekers in the past regarded pleasant and agreeable things in the world as impermanent, as suffering, as non-self, as an affliction, as fearful, they abandoned wanting. So they regard all these pleasant and agreeable things as, they're out of control. It is suffering, it's an irritation, and it's not yours, you can't control it, and in the end it's just an affliction. And it's dangerous, they abandon wanting. And you have the dependent cessation. As I mentioned yesterday, you have dependent origination, which people always know about, but with dependent origination, it's this opposite dependent cessation. When this thing ceases, the other things cease. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same wanting, when wanting fades away, comes a cessation of the fuel, which now keeps you in samsara. The car loses its fuel source, and it starts going slow and slow until it sort of ceases. With the cessation of fuel, the cessation of states of existence, states you want to go, and with the cessation of states of existence, the cessation of rebirth, there's nowhere to get reborn into. And with the cessation of rebirth, obviously, aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, unhappiness, and distress cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. This is the passing away of suffering. So that's actually how cessation happens, how enlightenment happens. Just give up your wanting. Because of wanting, there's no fuel, there's nothing which drives you to another life. You just stop, cease, no more fuel. Like a car, like an aircraft, like something which has just exhausted all of its fuel and now just stops and ceases. And that's right, I said that. The cessation subsiding and passing away of form, the cessation and subsiding and passing away of experience, the cessation, subsiding, passing away of perception, of will, of consciousnesses, is the cessation of suffering, the subsiding of affliction, the passing away of aging and death. And this is challenging for everybody, but one of the reasons which I give these a word of the Buddha classes is because, just not sanitizing it for you. This is how the Buddha spoke. And it's a cessation, subsiding and passing away, not just of bodies, but of experience. No experience anymore, not living happily ever after, not living suffering ever after, no happiness, no suffering, nothing. Experience stops. And perception stops. The will, you're not moving anymore. There's nothing to make you move. And consciousnesses subsiding, ceasing. And that's the ending of aging and death. Now, Nibbana. And so many people say so many different things about Nibbana. This is what the Buddha said. This is peaceful. This is sublime. This is the stilling. The word is samatha, stilling of all will. And sometimes you pause there. What does that mean? Stilling of all will. All the thing which drives you, which moves you. It's so calm, so still, that nothing moves. And as I think I've mentioned before, when nothing moves, when it's still, it disappears. In other words, the sound of the vibration of the air in this room. If you put a hand over there, sometimes you can hear things vibrate. If you put a cup over your ear, you can hear the vibration of the air. But after a while it disappears because it doesn't change. If it's still, it's like this computer. If I don't touch something, it just turns off. That's like the five senses, the six senses, that when they get still, then they disappear. The stilling of all will. The relinquishing of all acquisitions, which means everything which you have accumulated in this lifetime and further lifetime, in past lifetimes, things by which you define yourself, your character, your race, religion, gender, age, formas, happiness, all those things which you've acquired, you've built up over the years, all starts to vanish. and the subsiding of affliction, the passing away of aging and death. Oh, okay, no, sorry, I jumped back. The relinquishing of all acquisition, the destruction of wanting. Don't want anything anymore. Fading away, cessation, nibbana. So, when excited by wanting, overcome by wanting. When full of aversion, overcome by aversion. When deluded, overcome by delusion. With our mind obsessed by these three, one intentionally creates problems for oneself, for others, or for both. You experience mental suffering and depression. But when wanting, aversion, and delusion are abandoned, you do not intentionally create any problems for yourself or others, or for both. You do not experience mental suffering and depression. In this way, nibbana can be experienced directly. And this is called nibbana. Nibbana with residue remaining. That paragraph, nibbana with residue remaining. In other words, what's remaining is your life. You still have your five senses. You're still experiencing stuff. Right? The wanting is gone. Ill will gone. Delusion gone. So here, in this way, wow, what are you doing? This is called the truth of suffering, having a computer. It does not do what it's supposed to do. The destruction of wanting, the destruction of aversion, the destruction of delusion, this is called nibbana with residue remaining. And just to give you a commentary on that, I probably would have done this anyway during the other talks, to understand what this means, nibbana, and how could that be happiness. Then we come to that story of the children playing the wishing game. Many of you know that story. 5 children playing wishing game. And this is one of the stories I use to explain, to make this, what the Buddha said, make it sort of come alive with a metaphor, a simile. 5 children playing this wishing game. The rules are this: you have a wish. Whoever makes the best wish will win the wishing game. First kid said, if I had a wish, I'd wish for a computer game. Very good. Second kid, if I had a wish, I wish for a computer game shop. With a computer game store, I can buy many computer games. If I own the store, then I can get an upgrade whenever I want. Obviously a much better wish. The third kid said, if I had a wish, let's go for broke. Let's have $10 billion US. With $10 billion US, then I can buy my own computer game shop. But then more importantly, if I have a shop, play computer games, my mummy keeps telling me that I have to do my homework first of all. So to get around that problem, after I've got my own computer game shop, I'll buy my own school. And if I employ the teachers and the principal, then if they don't give me top marks for doing no homework at all, then they get the sack. So therefore I can play computer games all day without needing to go to school. I can I can award myself the best grades, the best degrees. Actually, just when I graduate from my own school, I can buy my own university like Mr. Trump did, Trump University. And then once I own the university, I can give myself honorary degrees, PhDs, whatever I want. And all the time, my mum doesn't have to worry about my academic performance because I've got the degrees to show it. And whenever there's something else I want, I can buy it. And probably with $10 billion US, there's enough money there. You can't spend that in just a whole lifetime. So that's my wish. Obviously much better than a computer game shop. So number 3 was winning. Number 4, really smart kid. That kid said, well, if I had a wish, I'd wish for 3 wishes. That's a wish. So for my first wish, I'd have the computer game shop. The second wish, I'd have the $10 billion US. For the third wish, I'd have 3 more wishes. That way, I can go on forever. Beat that. So that's infinity of wishes. And that's very hard to beat that. How can you beat that? Last kid did beat that. the last child said, if I had a wish, I wish I had such perfect contentment I never needed a wish ever again. Now you understand what the Buddha is. Number 5. So content, you don't need wanting. The irritation of wanting is gone. The end of greed, hatred, delusion. No more wanting. Content, at last. So now you understand why it says here, destruction of wanting, aversion, of delusion, that's called nibbana with residue remaining. The arahat. If one is intent on the end of wanting and clarity of mind, when they sees the arising of any one of the 6 senses, one's mind is completely free from wanting. One lets go. Just the senses doing their stuff. You don't stop them, you don't push them, you don't just do anything. You just peaceful, completely liberated, nothing further to be done, no need to increase what has been done. As a stone mountain, one solid mass is not stirred by the wind. So no sights, sounds, odors, taste, touches, or mind objects, desirable or undesirable, stir the stability of the mind. The mind is steady and freed, and you witness the vanishing of the mind. Because it starts off not moving, and then when it doesn't move, it vanishes. And, what is the one about, from this simile, stone mountain, one solid mass not stirred by the wind, when you're enlightened. That was the simile of the monk who asked his abbot, I want to go for Nibbana. I want to become enlightened. I've done all the duties and I helped in the monastery. Not far from here there's a little lake, and in the middle of the lake there is an abandoned island. No one lives there. Can you please let me build a little shack on that island? And all I would ask is once a week, just once a week, to send an attendant over to bring me supplies. Just once a week. And I will live so simply, meditating all day. And so I give myself the best opportunity to get fully enlightened. And the abbot thought, why not? So, he managed to send some carpenters, nice little shed. And then once a month, this little hut was finished for the monk. Then, once a week, the attendant would go over just with supplies, maybe some brown rice, some lentils. He probably had his own little garden there, Mahayana monk. And he lived almost in perfect solitude. Day after day, week after week, month after month, the years went past. And after 3 years, he decided he was enlightened. A fully enlightened arahat. So what to do next? So when the attendant came, the monk wrote a little note, please send next week some parchment, a little brush pen that I use for calligraphy, and some ink. He wanted to compose some calligraphy. So the next week, the supplies came. And this monk, he meditated very long hours, very deep. And when he came out of his meditation with his mind perfectly free, he wrote down a poem in 4 lines. The diligent monk, alone for 3 years, is no longer moved by the 4 worldly winds. And he wrote that in the most exquisite calligraphy. It was a work of art. And he thought how that, once it reached the abbot, how it would be probably paraded even in the capital city. It would be hung in a place of honor in the temple. The first words so beautifully put together by a newly enlightened arahat, a monk. And this is where it comes from when it says, as a stone mountain, one solid mass, is not stirred by the wind. The four winds are the north wind, the south wind, the east wind, the west wind. And that's claim of enlightenment. So the next week he sent it with the attendant to the abbot, and then he just relaxed. And the next week when the attendant came, he had a reply from the abbot. And he took that reply, and it was a scroll just like his. And when he unwrapped the scroll, it was his scroll, only on his beautifully crafted, artistic poem, the abbot had written in ballpoint pen. The first line, the diligent monk, he'd written the words F-A-R-T, fart. Alone for 3 years. Another F-A-R-T in capital letters, red. And the third line is no longer moved. F-A-R-T, underlined by the four worldly winds. F-A-R-T, 3 underlines and 3 exclamation marks afterwards. He'd ruined the calligraphy. You only get enlightened once, and he ruined it. He messed it up. This was a work of art. This was vandalism. And the monk was so upset, he called over to the attendant, who could still hear him as he was rowing back. Come back here. And he jumped into the boat. Take me to that abbot now. And he went to see the abbot. He went into the abbot's room, slammed the piece of calligraphy on the table. Explain yourself, said the monk to the abbot. And the abbot very calmly stood up and read out the poem. The diligent monk, alone for 3 years, is no longer moved by the four worldly winds. And then he looked up at the monk and said, but, monk, 4 little farts have blown you clean across the lake. And oh no, I'm not enlightened after all. And so he went back over to the lake and meditated a bit longer. So that's where we get these things from. No longer because that's how we test if someone's enlightened. Someone comes and they say, Della comes on and says, Ajahn Brahm, I'm fully enlightened. I said, nah, women can't get enlightened these days. And then I'll wait. What? What are you misogynist? This is 21st century. You can't say things like that. But he said, oh, okay. And so, that's tick one box. See how many other boxes I can tick you. To see if you are moved. Do whatever you possibly can to upset people. In a non-violent way. And one who has considered, this is some Sutta Pada, and one who has considered all the contrasts on this earth. That's a wonderful saying, all the contrasts, measures this way, that way. And just contrast, that's all. There's no more disturbed by anything, whatever, in the world. The world is still there. It's cold, it's hot. You get what you want. Sometimes you don't get what you want. Sometimes that you're sick, sometimes you're healthy. Sometimes that people say wonderful things to you, sometimes they say terrible things to you. They're both the same. They don't know what's going on. So you just know all the contrasts in this earth. You're not disturbed by anything. The peaceful one, free from rage, free from frustration, and free from wanting. And the stream of consciousness will not be reborn. Oh, now this is, what does it feel like to be fully enlightened? This is the bhikkhuni. And that's one of the reasons why I just really put myself on the line to support the bhikkhunis, raise funds for them, make sure they get their ordination. And you can see brilliant stuff here from the Bhikkhuni Vajira. These were just amazing. So Mara is a symbol of, the bad guy, and just always trying to sort of stop people becoming enlightened. Mara asks, by whom has this being been created? Where is a maker of this being? Where has this being arisen, and where does this being cease? And the Bhikkhuni Arahat Vajira replies, why now do you assume a being, Mara? Is that your wrong view? This is just a heap of sankharas. Here no being is found. Just as with the coming together of parts, the word vehicle is used, so when the five components of existence exist, there is a conventional term, a being. But it is only dukkha that comes to be. Dukkha that stands, and dukkha that falls away. That's suffering. Nothing but suffering comes to be. Nothing but suffering ceases. That's all. So, maybe, I think you know all my tricks by now. Everything I say is get recorded and every grimace gets photographed. So, sometimes I've used that as a little question to see if people understand what it's like being an arahat with things remaining, still alive. Does an enlightened being experience happiness or suffering? Does suffering arising and suffering passing away? An enlightened being, they say, is like a work person, a workman, work lady, waiting for their wages. They've done the work, but they haven't been paid yet. So they're still suffering. They're enlightened. They're suffering. So when do they get their paycheck? When does their suffering cease without remainder? That's the enlightenment without remainder. The parinibbana, where the five components of existence dissolve, never to arise again. They disappear. Poof. Gone out of existence. Okay. It's only dukkha that comes to be, dukkha that stands, and dukkha that ceases. That's, I lost it again. Quite what have I done? Dukkha that ceases. An arahat understands the six senses, sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and the mind will cease completely and totally without remainder, and no other senses will arise anywhere in any way. This is another way one understands there's nothing more to be done by an arahat. And that is in the Samyutta Nikaya, it's the 48, it's the Salayatana, the six sense spaces, number 53. I remember discussing with Ajahn in all the places throughout the suttas, where is it made most clear that after enlightenment, after parinibbana, that there's no more experience left. The six senses, not just saying, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and the mind, will cease completely and totally without remainder. And no other senses, including the mind, will arise anywhere in any way. This is another way one knows there's nothing more to be done from an arahat. So clear. There's no sort of some consciousness goes to a place. I used to call it like the last retirement home for existence. You think that somewhere, someplace, yeah, all the other stuff can go, but someplace, your mind, your existence, your consciousness, your soul, your whatever it is, can go and live happily ever after. It's the old Prince Charming and Cinderella sort of fantasy. Some last resting home after all that hard work. That doesn't understand the nature of our body and mind. If it exists anywhere, it suffers. Ceases. Anyway, now, the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Now, first of all, that's the third noble truth. Quite a tough noble truth to get your head around. And you may sort of say, well, what's the point? Some years ago, I managed to get a visual aid to demonstrate, what Nibbana is. I called it the Enlightenment Machine. I've had two of them in my life as a monk, And both times, to raise money, I think, for the nuns and monasteries, we auctioned them off. And they've gone. But that's fair enough. It was a little machine. I did a little black machine. I think some of you may have seen it. And it had a battery inside. And you turn the light, the simple switch, you turn the switch, and then a hand came out, turned itself off, and then went back inside again. And that was it. It was, I loved that machine. It was just so cool. What was its point? Turn it on and find out. You turn it on, it turns itself off. That's the only point of the whole thing. That's life. That's why I called it Enlightenment Machine. So amazing. Some people didn't get it, but it was really great. Little switch. Turn it on, and the hand came out, went back inside, finished. That's your whole purpose in life, to turn yourself off. They're just challenging people. That's not what we expect, but there we go. The noble truth of the way, leading to cessation of suffering, the fourth noble truth. There are these two extremes that should be avoided. This is the very first teaching of the Buddha after he became enlightened, the middle way. The pursuit of happiness through the five senses. This is Kamasu Kalikana Yoga. Word karma refers to the five senses, and it's made very clear. It does not refer to the pursuit of happiness in the sixth sense, in the mind. And the reason why that is because that leads out of samsara. And which is low, I call hina. But actually the word Hinayana does not mean small vehicle. It actually means low vehicle. Secular, the way of worldlings, ignoble, unbeneficial, and the pursuit, the alternative. Sometimes they call it Ataganamatanu Yoga, that's a Pali, and sometimes we like asceticism or mortification of the body. That's way too extreme. What it means, and this is literal, it does mean pursuit of practices that fatigue the body and mind, which tire it out, which is painful, ignoble, unbeneficial. That is very important to linger on. Meditation, walking, pushing yourself, and you get fatigued and tired. That is not the middle way. So it's one of the reasons, understanding this, it's the extreme of things which tire the body. Those are stuff when you don't eat well, you get tired, you get weak, you don't sort of drink, you don't sleep well enough. One of the reasons, very carefully, I was the one who sort of designed this place, and I made sure it was as comfortable as you possibly can without sort of indulging. It's not a 5-star resort, but hopefully it's comfortable for you. You've got your own rooms, and you can go back to your room at any time to take a nap if you need to take a nap. You can get up any time. You can get up 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and meditate. So we make it so it's convenient for you, so you don't get tired and exhausted. You don't push yourself like you do at work or in life. Just, I've got to get through, I've got to do this, I've got to get this out of the way. And then you really exhaust yourself. And quite frankly, that's one of the diseases I see in our modern world, is tiredness. Chronic exhaustion. But you keep going because you feel you have to. And sometimes you get so tired, you push, and sometimes you just can't take anymore. Sometimes you get exhaustion, depression, you get cancers. And I'm sure there's a huge amount because people don't know how to relax. Just take a break. They feel guilty, they feel they can't. So at the very least, if you come here and you spend all 9 days just sleeping, congratulations, well done. I've probably saved another cancer. And it's true, you just need to relax. so that, and the Buddha's pointed this out, paths which just tire you out is unbeneficial. You get your energy back, sooner or later, and then you feel really good, and the meditation's easy. So the ones which fatigue the body and the mind. What's another one which fatigues the mind? Thinking and worrying. Sometimes you got some problem, it's pressing, and what am I going to do? And you think this way, you think that way, you think up and down all over the place, and my goodness, you get exhausted. And you can't sleep at night, and then afterwards you wake up in the morning just not really sleeping, and you're just so tired, you push, and it gets worse and worse and worse. Instead of just being able to take a break and relax. That's a wonderful thing to do. And then answers come to you instead of pushing them through thinking. Thinking tires you out so much. Anyway, without going to either of these extremes, the Buddha has awakened to the middle way, which gives rise to vision, to wisdom, which leads to peace, direct understanding, to enlightenment, to nibbana. So all of those things which it says there, vision, wisdom, peace, direct understanding, enlightenment, nibbana, well, many people, they can't really understand what's wisdom and what's vision, what's direct understanding, enlightenment. Many people argue, I'm wise. No, I'm wiser than you are. Or whatever it is, and who's wise, who's not wise. But the one thing in there which you can't mistake is peace, which leads to peace. So if this is the middle way, it leads to peace, this wonderful sense of comfort, this ease of body and mind. So for those of you who ask, and you will keep on asking, am I going on the right path? Is this the middle way? If it's leading to peace, then you know it's in the right way. Wisdom is just too many people argue what's wisdom, what's not wisdom. But peace, you know for yourself, and you can't really mistake it. And what is that middle way? It is this Noble Eightfold Path. Now, I've changed a few of these translations here. Right view, I can't go past that one. That's pretty accurate. Instead of right thought, I already mentioned that thought, we don't want to encourage more thought. We think too much. And so if there is anything called right thought, as opposed to wrong thought, I would say no thought. It's not being stupid, it's we think too much. And so we said, what was that story? About the two monks. And the two monks were having an argument. You have to understand and accept rebirth, reincarnation, essential part of the Buddha's path. And the other monk said, no, you haven't died yet. How do you know you're going to get reborn or not? You can only know the present moment, only now. The past and the future is all just fantasies. So you can't need to know reincarnation. And the other monks, yes, you must. No, I disagree. It's present moment. Future and past are just fantasies. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't happen. Maybe, apparently, there was a movie called Matrix, where they're just listening into some made-up fantasy world. But maybe this is it, the Matrix. Maybe you won't die. Maybe that's just how it's been just brainwashed into you. How can you be sure that you were born? How can you be sure? Maybe it's just a setup. It's fake news. Well, there you go. So anyway, one of the monks says, I'll ask the master. So he went to see the master, and the master said, oh yeah, you got a point there. It's in all the suttas. The idea of not having rebirth. And what's the point of ending rebirth? It doesn't make sense. So reincarnation or rebirth is an essential part of the Buddha's teaching. I agree with you. So the monk went outside and said, see, the head monk agrees with me. He can't agree with you. So the second monk went in and said, well, you can't really know the future, the past. You can only rely on what you know in this moment. That's all we have. All our senses just know now is the most important time. The the only thing you do is to care, the thing in front of you, the most important thing in the whole world. And the headmaster, oh, yeah, you've got a point there. Yeah, I agree with you. And so at the moment when I said there, the abbot agrees with me. No, he can't. He agreed with me. No, he agreed with me just now. So they both went in there together. And then the first man said, look, reincarnation, true, it's an essential part. You have to agree with that. And the other man said, no, it's only present moment awareness. And he said, first you agreed with this monk, now you agree with me. That can't be right. And the head monk said, yeah, that's right. That's the end of the story. But what I like, I think I've already told you, is that sort of stuff happened to me. I always tell my students, I said, never argue with an idiot. I don't agree with that. Yeah, you've got a point. Anyway, so that's instead of right thoughts, because that's where you get argument, it actually does mean right motivation. It's where you're coming from. So when you have, and I'll go down to this soon, when you have your right view, basically there's no one in here, no self, and you don't need anything, no wanting. So the right view, right motivation, second factor, it becomes make peace, be kind, be gentle. Have you ever heard that anywhere? It's on people's bags. It's on their t-shirts. Make peace, be kind, be gentle. And I'm a bit embarrassed you put down there Ajahn Brahm. I did not say that. The Buddha did. That's the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. That is core teachings. That's what right motivation means. Making peace is a bit of a loose translation. It does mean renouncing, letting go. It's nekama, sankappa. Renouncing means letting go, giving up, sort of not controlling. It is. I call it making peace because it makes it a little bit more easy to understand. Kindness. Because I always wondered, where on earth in the Eightfold Path is compassion? And you don't see it in right, what you got here, right speech, right view, motivation, speech, action, livelihood, endeavour, mindfulness, stillness. Where's compassion? It's right there in that second one. The second part of the second factor of the Eightfold Path. It's awyapada, which is a synonym for metta. Loving kindness, compassion. Make peace, be kind. And then the third part of right motivation is ahingsaka, or sometimes called vihingsaka, same word. And many people know that from Mahatma Gandhi. Ahimsa, non-violence. And that becomes the second factor of the Eightfold Path. Non-violence, compassion, and letting go. These beautiful qualities which have been known in all Buddhist traditions for centuries. That's actually where it lives. The second factor of the Eightfold Path. Once you've got the right view, your motivation, where you're coming from. Not trying to get things or attain things, but seeing how many things you can let go of. Seeing how much you can disappear. Not be proud. See just how kind you can be and how gentle. That becomes the right view, the right motivation, where you're coming from. And obviously, after right view and right motivation, and of course, the right speech, action, livelihood, they fall in line automatically. If you're letting go of stuff rather than wanting more stuff, if you're being kind and gentle, where are you going to break any precepts? You're not going to sort of steal stuff or hurt people or commit adultery. You don't want to hurt anybody. You just want to be kind. Where you're coming from, you're gentle. And you don't want things, you want to let go of things. So that is where we find that from the right motivation, all of the precepts, right speech, action, livelihood, they all come automatically. Sometimes people say, oh, is it hard to keep the monk's precepts all these years? Of course not. It's a beautiful lifestyle. When you're living a life of letting go and being kind and being gentle, of course. It's normal, natural. You don't even need to think about it much, because it's just a natural, wonderful way of being kind, being gentle, letting go. So this is where it comes. And of course, once you've got the right precepts, it means you've been renouncing, which means it's what the right endeavour. It's the right restraint. In fact, I'm probably going to change this to restraint later on, instead of endeavour. But you're always restraining the senses, restraining your body, speech, mind, action, restraining your thoughts. You're sitting here, you're restraining the 5 hindrances. And then once the 5 hindrances have been restrained, then it's natural, you become much more mindful. The mindfulness increases, the less active you are. Energy goes into the knower, taken away from the doer. You wake up. Hopefully that's happening soon. If it hasn't happened already, you appreciate the food more. The trees and the flowers and the birds and the wind, you can actually feel it more. And there are those wonderful times when you're just walking around and something just catches your attention. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. Just a little drop of water just dropping from the roof onto a puddle. It's delightful. This is where to see a world in a grain of sand, a world in a small grain of sand, a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. That was an old poem. It was a very beautiful little poem by, how was it? Not Yeats. It was instead of thinking about it, I'm going to just leave the author of that alone for a little while, and then it will just come up to me, because it was one of these late 17th century, early 18th century. He was also a wonderful portrait painter as well. A painter, and also a great poet. Amazing fellow. But anyway, that was one of the poems which I read when I was young. Beautiful. See a world in a grain of sand. Heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand. When you have those things all the time, but you're going too fast, you're not awake enough to be able to actually see into it. And that's actually how these things happen. And anyway, where have I gone? The middle way leads to peace. So, okay, the pursuit of pleasure that is linked to the 5 senses, low, secular, this is repeating what was said earlier, coarse, ignoble, and unbeneficial, is a state beset by suffering, frustration, despair, and fever. It is the wrong way. Disengagement from the pursuit of pleasure that is linked to the 5 senses is a state without suffering, frustration, despair, and fever. It is the right way. And this is from the Dhammapada. And at verse 273, 276, the Noble Eightfold Path is the best of all practices. This is the only path. Ezo wa maggo, nati anyo, dasanasa visuddhya. And you can't really fault this translation at all. Ezo, this, ewa, the only, magga, path. Nati anyo, there is no other, for the purifying of insight. Follow this path. Please again, I use this word discombobulate. Follow this path and you will confuse Mara. So I mention this because some people keep, and it's unsustainable, it's illogical, you can refute it so easily, where it says that the Satipatthana is the only path. It never says that at all. And that the only path is used for the Eightfold Path. Not a Onefold Path, an Eightfold Path. Listen, the end of dying has been reached. I shall instruct you, I shall teach you the Dhamma, practicing as you are instructed by realizing for yourself in this very life. Through direct understanding, you will soon enter upon and abide in that supreme goal of the holy life, for the sake of which people rightly go forth into the monastic life. So that is the right view. And how to know right view from wrong view? Because how would you know? One teacher says, oh, Ajahn Brahm has got the right view. And they said, no, he hasn't. Ajahn, somebody else has got the right view. No, that's not the right view. You go on the diamond path to Vajrayana, shortcut. No, that's not the right view. You just chant Amitofu and get reborn in the Pure Land. And then from the Pure Land you'll get reborn, you get enlightened with Amitabha. That's the right way. No, that's not the right way. Sudden enlightenment, from Zen. I saw this once. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. This young Zen monk, he was really wacky. He thought he was enlightened. He came to see Ajahn Chah. So, where are you from? He said, I'm from Japan, I think through a translator. And he said, now, how are you? Now, how are you practicing? And every now and again, the Zen monk would get something hard and go, to Ajahn Chah. And I said, what are you doing? What's that? You enlightened, Ajahn Chah? He was so nuts. They're very good Zen monks. Yes. And here we go. So anyway, it's what's right for you, what's wrong for you. How do you know? So, after, this is the Buddha speaking, after my parinibbana, after he's disappeared, some will think that the Dhamm has ended and you no longer have a teacher. That's wrong. After the Buddha's parinibbana, the Dhamma and the Vinaya will be your teacher. The Dhamma which he had taught and the training. Vinaya, those are the precepts from the monks and nuns. 8 precepts, 5 precepts, and all the other duties you have, those are your teacher. And just one small paragraph, that just changed the whole course of Buddhist history. We could not have a leader, a pope, a head monk, a Sangharaja, a Mahanayaka. You can't have those. You don't have a leader. The teachings will be your leader. But even to this day, Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, you never go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dhamma and Ajahn Brahm. You don't go to refuge for the Buddha, the Dhamma and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Not to people. So the teachings will be your leader from now on. It was a weakness of Buddhism because it meant that there was very difficult to organize anything. But with that disorganization, there was still this, it was like scattering seeds in a forest. Those which were healthy, strong, in the right place, they would grow. Instead of having like things garden, clearing parts of the forest and making a sort of a cultivated garden. It was so natural. And to this day, if a monastery grows up anywhere, could be say Dhammasara, it's in the right place, nice support and good people there, then it flourishes. It's not forth from outside, grows from within. And so after Buddha's parinibbana, that's your teacher. And they said, suppose someone were to say, friends, this is the Buddha's teachings, the Dhamma and the Vinaya that I heard myself from the Buddha, then you should check that person's word with the sutta. This sutta is, one of the reasons why people like Ajahn Sujato spend a lot of time trying to put that down, make it freely available. Why people like Ajahn Brahmadi give these amazing sutta retreats. And they said, this is what the sutta says. So you check that person's words with the sutta and with the Vinaya. If they agree, then you should conclude that that's a teaching of the Buddha. If it disagrees with the sutta and the Vinaya, then you should conclude that this person has wrongly understood the teaching of the Buddha. So even what I say, when anybody says, check it with the suttas. Does it make sense? Of course, the best way to check it with the suttas is learn some Pali. Because you have my translation here, and other people might translate it differently. But still, even if you allow for different translations, these things are repeated so many times, again and again and again and again. It's very hard to actually move that far away from what the Buddha actually meant. So, or suppose someone was said, I heard from this community of senior monastics with distinguished teachers. Then you should not just believe what they say just because it's a big lot of monks and they're very famous. You should check this person's words with the sutras and Vinaya. If they agree, then you should conclude, yes, that's a teaching of the Buddha. If it disagrees with the sutra and Vinaya, then you should conclude that this community has wrongly understood the teachings of the Buddha. It doesn't matter if they're famous teachers, and many of them. Or suppose someone were to say, friends, I heard this from many learned elders who uphold a tradition. Then you should check the person's word with the Sutta and the Vinaya. If they agree, you should conclude that it is the teachings of the Buddha. If it disagrees, you should conclude it's not. Or suppose someone would say, friends, I heard this from one learned elder. Not any learned elder. This fellow was enlightened. He could fly through the air. He was really amazing. Then you should check this person's word with the Sutta and the Vinaya. If they agree, then you should conclude it is the teaching of the Buddha. It disagrees with the Sutta and Vinaya, you should conclude that this learned elder has wrongly understood the teaching of the Buddha. So basically, it doesn't matter who says it, how many they are, how well learned they are, how big a tradition they have, still go back to the teachings of the Buddha. And that's actually gives you some idea. Now, we do wrong view, right view. It's actually 4 o'clock now. So let's leave it here, and then we can continue on tomorrow. How many more days have we got? What day is it today? Tuesday. Wednesday, Thursday. Saturday we're back again. Okay, in the afternoon? Okay, so we've got 3 days. Okay, so there's no way we can get through all of this. So, because we got through the basic of the Eightfold Path, you can actually see the 8 factors of the Eightfold Path. The right view, that's very long. The right motivation, I've already explained that, pretty much enough. Speech, action, livelihood. You got the endeavor, or sometimes I call now these days restraint, mindfulness, samadhi, stillness. You want us to just flick over to, because most people they want to hear about mindfulness and samadhi. Or sometimes you've heard that too many times. What do you reckon? What would you like the 3 days? Sorry? Everything, yeah. Anything. So I choose. Okay. So I think we might do that. What I'll do is I'll skip over to the right endeavor or restraint, and then mindfulness, and then samadhi at the end. Okay, do that one. Okay, so sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very good. Oh, that little stick which you had, have you still got that one? I got it. Okay, great. I can keep it, but make sure it gets to me by the end of the retreat. Okay, But do you need it to do translation? I got it on there. Okay, yeah. Okay, so if we have it back, that'd be good. Okie dokie. So have a lovely afternoon. See what happens.